having to interact with these other consultants and expertise. Usually it's science-based, sometimes it's economics-based. And anytime I enter an area that I don't know about, it's like taking a class you haven't taken before. You're like, I'm going to learn about this. I'm going to have the opportunity to work with this outside person, and we're going to be able to help each other. And I think it's one of the more wonderful parts of the job, that you're continually learning and getting exposed to new areas over time. The other thing I'll mention is that, and I think it relates to something everyone has said, in terms of the job search, I think sometimes there's this notion, and just so you know a little bit about my background, I've worked as attorney for 2 nonprofit organizations, state agency office of counsel, and was a partner of counsel with a private firm, so I've kind of worn a lot of these hats at different points in my career. That I think sometimes there's this notion that the way you look for a job is you send out as many applications as you possibly can, you work on your resume, and that you sort of are constantly looking at the front door of how to get in through the job application process. And I think what's important to realize is one of the reasons you get involved with a lot of organizations, bar organizations, nonprofit organizations, networking events, is rather than just you looking for your job, if you have a bunch of people out there that you develop, respectful, healthy, professional relationships with, and they kind of like you and have a sense of your skill set and your focus, they'll be looking out for you. They'll say, I just found out about an opening. This just came across my listserv of something. This might be something you're interested in. I just had lunch with someone. They'll help you find out about things and contacts that you wouldn't otherwise know about. So that's the first thing there is. That's why you get involved. If you join the environmental law section of the Bar Association of San Francisco, these are the people you're going to be looking for a job with. So just go out and socialize with them, and if they have an opening and they like you, you'll hear from them. The other, and this is just a personal thing, is that even when, and I was looking for a job initially after law school and the economy was not so strong also, is if you approach someone and say, I want to meet with you about working for your organization, your agency, your firm, and there's not an opening, whether you send a letter or call, they'll say no, because it's not an opening. If you approach someone and say, I think what you do is amazing, and I think you are amazing, and I want to find out how you became you so I can be like you, will you meet with me to you don't have to be quite that. That's ascending levels of something else. But what I'm saying is most people, unless they really were not hugged as children, are generally inclined to try and meet with you when you approach them from a position of respect and interest and say, I'm not approaching you about a job. I'm approaching you because I'm really interested in your practice area and I want to talk to you about the practice area because I think it might be something that I really want to do. If you meet with that person, if you approach them in that spirit, even if there's not an opening, let's put it this way, if they have an opening in their firm, you're still meeting with them, right? Even if you didn't send an application. And if not, there's a good chance you're going to walk away from that lunch or that coffee or whatever that meeting is with 3 or 4 new names, 3 or 4 new organizations, 3 or 4 agencies that you didn't know about that you can follow up on. So I think this is all sort of in the spirit that, there are ways to enter the job market straight through the front door, and sometimes that works. But if you sort of follow what you're really interested in and throw yourself into it, I think it's consistent with the boldness, you're going to end up meeting a lot of the people. And you're actually, the other thing I'll share with you, if you have 20 meetings with people that are doing things that you like, by the time you've had those 15 or 20 meetings, you actually know a lot. So when you finally get the interview that you want, you're going to come across as pretty smart and informed. Because the process of just having all those meetings and doing those network events, you learn a lot about the lay of the land or the ocean. So that when an opportunity presents itself, you're actually really well positioned to do a good job in sort of a formal interview process. So with that, why don't I had a common question I wanted to put to them, but why don't we open it up a little bit to all of you. You can put it to an individual or to the whole panel with some questions. Yeah.
I have a question for Leila regarding the shark finning. Is there anything that's done, aside from the bill being passed, is there anything done as far as going into the communities that consume shark fin soup, and you know, to me it kind of felt like the war on drugs, the demand is still there. There's going to be, it'll still find its way. Was there anything done along with your organization or other organizations kind of addressing that?
Yeah, that was an essential part of the campaign, and we absolutely could not have gotten the bill passed if it hadn't been for really active engagement of the Asian Pacific American community. So there was an alliance called the Asian Pacific American Ocean Harmony Alliance that is that includes dozens of organizations, so APA law societies, community-based societies, or associations, and then individuals, leaders in their communities. There were student groups, there were individuals who were very, very active in reaching out to their communities in San Francisco and Los Angeles, all along the coast where there are restaurants that serve shark fin soup and where it's consumed. And that was absolutely essential because, I mean, from the environmental perspective, we couldn't really speak to the cultural aspects of the issue. So we just had phenomenal volunteers that really felt that this was something that people really just needed to be educated about. And when they understood that it was a very wasteful and destructive practice, it was just a matter of saying, you know, this is not really worth it. In one poll of a statewide poll, we found that 70% of Chinese Californians supported the ban. And so it was, you know, it was a really important kind of essential aspect of the campaign. One thing that complicated the cultural issues is the mayoral race in San Francisco. And so some of the candidates took that issue on as one of their main issues in campaigning in the city, and that was more polarizing than I think it would have been without the race happening, and that's too bad, but yeah.
I have a question for Tim. You mentioned that you'll probably be defending a lawsuit or a legal challenge regarding the climate policy for the Bay Plan, and I was wondering, I don't know how far along it is, but I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about who's suing over what, and it seems like it's new, so it's interesting.
Well, nobody's suing yet.
Okay.
We just passed it October 6th.
Okay.
And, right, and we're preparing a package to send to the Office of Administrative Law, which is what you have to do after you develop regulations, or you have to send it to Sacramento, and they have to go over it. They nitpick over it for 30 days, and then they tell you that you can cross all your T's and dot all your I's. But actually, when we started out, I was 90% sure we were going to get sued. But our ED was so clever, Will Travis, that he got a 24-0 vote from our commission to approve these policies. So I'm not so sure that we're going to get sued anymore. And if we are sued, I don't think there's really any good cause of action against us, because our statute authorizes us to prepare this Bay Plan, and we have almost total discretion to do what we want. We're not violating any of the strictures in our statute or regulations by developing policies on climate change unless we go beyond what our statute authorizes us to do, and we haven't. So I think the only, viable, I shouldn't be telling you this, but the only viable lawsuit would be a CEQA kind of a thing, or Open Meetings Act kind of a technical violation. And since we had a 24-0 vote, and most of the opposition kind of, we exhausted them, I think they kind of gave up. We just sort of outlasted them. We had the rope-a-dope theory. We just go like this and let them beat us up for 2.5 years, and they'll get tired of hitting us. And that's sort of what happened. And I'm really not sure that we're going to get sued at this point. But if we are, I'm pretty confident that we could win.
I have a question for Brett Potter. You talked about how you don't necessarily have to wait for your dream job. You can kind of create it yourself. And you mentioned that you and your friends from law school started your own NGO, I believe it was. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that and kind of talk about what advice you give to a recent graduate maybe considering doing something like that.
If you know what you believe, you'll be able to figure out what you need to know to create the job you want. So my first piece of advice would be to take a look inside yourself and figure out what's really interesting to you and what really drives you. And once you figure that out, a lot of people don't figure that out. I mean, a lot of people come to law school because they're like, they graduated with their history degree and they're like, Now we're right in. So some people may not know this, but presumably you're in this room, you may have at least some indication of what that is. If you figure that out, I think the choices become easier. Specifically, what happened to us is when I was a 1L, I met this guy, Brendan, who was a 3L at the law school, and he graduated, and he tells me he's going to hang a shingle and start his own shop. And I figured he was telling me this because he was essentially inviting himself to live on my couch for the next couple of years while he tries to get his feet under himself. But he turned out to be brilliant and was able to get a couple of small nonprofits as clients, and then I was volunteering for him in his little law office, which he was running out of his apartment. And we won some cases, and then the client hired us, and then we got a grant to replicate it in Southern California, and Brendan went south, and I stayed behind and ran the office for several years. So I think it was, that there's a combination of, believing in something, being willing to take a little bit of a risk, not having an immediate paycheck coming in, which is, a lot of people, you have to have some privilege to be able to do that. And then, getting a little lucky, having some success. Success tends to breed success, and before you know it, you'll have a sustainable occupation.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something that I remembered from when I was starting out, where in the same position that you were. Is I started out, I did a lot of sort of environmental litigation when I first began. I got a job at the Coastal Commission in their legal office. And then I got a fellowship to go to Woods Hole and the Marine Policy Division. And then I worked at the Marine Law Institute at the University of Maine for a while, and I got a job in Washington, D.C., and I working for the Ocean, it's called the Center for Marine Conservation, and it's now called the Ocean Conservancy. And they asked me if I wanted, they offered me a job, and I said, geez, okay, I'll take the job, but I don't want to do any lobbying. I think lobbying is kind of, sleazy. I had this prejudice against doing one aspect of my job, and that turned out to be the most fun thing that I worked on. So don't have these preconceived notions about things that you like or don't like without trying them out first, because it turned out that I had a really great time going to the Capitol and working with various people in the Congress that were sympathetic to what I was trying to do. There are a lot of people there, despite what you read in the paper, that really want to do good work, and it's really fun to work with them. We got a lot of bills through. This was in the 90s, so it was during the Clinton administration. And it was hard, to work with that Congress then because they were very conservative. But we had a good president, and he vetoed a lot of bad stuff that happened. And I worked at the Clean Water Network, which was an organization of about 1,200 other NGOs, and trying to stop a lot of bad stuff. They were trying to gut the ESA, they were trying to gut the Clean Water Act. And it was really fun stopping that, even though it would have been more fun to actually enact legislation. We did get some good stuff done, but I was just surprised at how much I enjoyed the lobbying part of the job, which I really didn't want to do when I was first hired. So keep an open mind, and you might really be surprised at some of the stuff that you like doing.
Yeah. This question is for Mr. Hines. You mentioned that the firm that you work with doesn't hire straight out unless they participated in your summer internship program. I recently graduated from here, and there wasn't a big push on getting involved in finding that internship that you want for a summer program.
Right.
Or I just didn't hear it, one of the two. And now I'm at a plaintiff's firm, and I'm doing litigation, but my desire is to get involved with the environment and in energy. And I'm kind of wondering, you also talk about client development and these things. What do you suggest for building those skills and preparing for moving to a place that is kind of closer aligned to what it is that you think that you really want to do in that instance?
Well, I think a lot of the discussion has sort of, I think, talked about that. The positions that you have, you have an opportunity to sort of make the most of them. And you can learn something from each client experience and from each case experience. And part of that's what Paul talked about in terms of the thing that I think gives us a lot of pleasure out of practicing environmental law. And it's part of what gives you pleasure from being a lawyer, too.